Good morning, everybody. This is Laura Petersen, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I hope everybody's having a great Sunday morning. Here it is May. Do you believe it? And so what I'm going to be going through right now is the stats, and this isn't quite the end of the month. It's April 19th to the 25th. So next week we'll have a little spike in the number of closings that happen, but this is where we're at right now. For the single-family homes, the median price increased from $397,995 to $399,990. And so obviously not a whole lot of increase, but a little bit. The average sales price decreased from $502,545 to $467,436. Now this is in the four counties of five counties, if I can count. It's Lake, Orange, Osceola, Polk, and Seminole. And the number of single family homes that sold was 697. And it was 698 the week before. So pretty similar when you're looking at everything. Basically how all of that breaks down is that there, of those 697 properties, 58 of them were under 250, 78 between 250 and 300, 214 between 3 and 4, 151 between 400 and 500, 168 between 500 and a million, and then 28 of them were over a million. So let's see, looking at this, the average days on the market before they get a contract is 78. An interesting thing, though, in my opinion, is when you're looking at the specific price points. Between under 250, it's 86 days. Between 250 and 300, it's 116. Then it goes to 74 between 3 and 4, 57 between 4 and 500. Then it goes to 80 days between 500 and a million, and 97 days over a million. So, you know, it's kind of, you've got to look at basically where people are buying and what's going on, obviously, in order to make all those things happen. Now, the average price per square foot of what it's sold overall is $220.99, but breaking that down, under $250, they sold at $162 a square foot. Then we go from $250 to $300 to $194, $199 from $300 to $400, $218 from $400 to $500. 500 to a million was $254, and then over a million was at $395. So I think that's always very interesting in regards to figuring out, you know, what's going on and what's happening and everything as well. So you've got to do a good job in looking at what's going on in your neighborhood, in your subdivision, your county, your zip code, all that kind of good stuff to kind of break it down. So when we're looking at condos, townhomes, and in that situation, that median price went from $298 last week to $290 this week. The average price went from $311 to $301. So those are closer, more. They're not a lot of high end condos and townhouses, so there's not as much of a dichotomy in that. The number of sales went from 148 to 128 for the week. And so obviously a lot less, 128 versus 697 for the single family homes. But how you break down those condos and townhouses, that there were 128 total, like I said, 46 of them were under 250, 23 between 250 and 300, 34 between 3 and 4, 16 between 400 and 500, 9 between 500 and a million, and there were none of them that sold over a million. And so basically that's kind of what the scoop is on that. Now the price per square foot very similar to the single family homes. It's kind of right at it's 196 overall. It's 188 under 250. Then it's at 203, 202, 199, 189 for all the price points. So basically that's kind of very consistent when it comes to a condo and townhome in regards to what's happening actually with that price per square foot kind of tells the story. And we'd have to look at it, much closer when it comes to overall in regards to what's going on. Now, looking at the leases, for single family homes, the median price went from 2,300 to 2,400, and the average price was 2,496 to 2,615. There were 251 that leased last week. Condos and townhomes, the median price went from 1,895 to 2,000, and the average went from 1,950 to 2,073. And there were 152 of those that were leased last week. So whatever you want to do out there in the real estate market, the stats are there that kind of give you a guide in regards to what's happening. But it's extremely local. It's getting people into your property that you necessarily weren't going to get on your own is really, one of the main reasons that you want to use a real estate agent. But then in addition to that, you want to make sure that everything is happening the way that it should, that there isn't any surprises as you go through the process and that things don't change. I mean, it's a big financial decision that's going on. So there's always a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that are happening out there. And so we just want to make sure that you're well informed in regards to what's going on. We look at these stats every week so that we can give you an idea in regards to what's happening. Is the market changing? Is it staying consistent? And the market has stayed very consistent throughout this whole time ever since the interest rates have changed. The number of properties selling has gone down. The inventory has gone up, but the prices have stayed pretty stable. They vary from week to week, maybe 10 or 15,000 up or down, or 20,000 even up or down for the week. But when you're looking at it consistently, we've had slight increases over the last few years, but very slight when you're looking at the big picture. And so we want to make sure that, if you're a buyer, that you're getting what you wanted to and what you expected to. And the same thing as a seller, that you want to make sure that you're getting what you want. Now, it might not be the most money of what you want when you're selling your home, and that's okay. Everybody's different in figuring that out, and that's why everybody's got their own situation and their own thing that they want to do, and that's why we're here to support in whatever way that we can. And it's always interesting when I'm working with people to see, what they want to do. I'm working with one family right now that they're selling their current property and they're moving into another one, and they want to do basically about 150,000 worth of renovations on this particular property, and it's a condo. And the value of it is somewhere around 300,000. So the thing is this is definitely a long-term play for them, because this is something and it's a second home for them. But basically, when it comes down to it, this is something that they want to have additional room, and they want to have it to their lifestyle, and they want to have it in this neighborhood where they're at. So they have looked at other neighborhoods. They have looked at other options, and this is their best option in their opinion in regards to what they do. So they may, if they don't hold on to it a long period of time, they might not get that 150,000 out of it, because the upgrades are not going to be something that is going to demand a different thing. Now, part of what they're doing in there is structural for that 150, so maybe it will come back to them, but it's something that they particularly want, not necessarily the the masses that are looking for that, and are they going to appreciate that? And so somebody will, but will they appreciate it to the point where they're going to pay an extra 100,000 for it? Probably not. And so going into it with your eyes wide open, knowing that that's what you're looking for, what you want, which is what you need for your family, that's most important. You know, it's like your money is to spend and to have the kind of lifestyle that you want. So spending that 150,000, and what they're actually doing is they're going to be, you know, taking out of part of the primary master bathroom and making the kitchen bigger is what they're going to be doing. So it's a case by case basis in regards to what's going on. They're getting rid of the tub in the primary bathroom. There is another tub in the unit, and then it'll still have a shower and everything. And it's quite a big room as it is right now. So they're just taking some of that and making it a kitchen, because the kitchen's more important to them than that big primary bathroom. So that's not going to appeal to everybody, but basically it's their house, and so they're allowed to do what they want to. But you have to know that when you do that, you may not get it out on the other side. You just have to be careful in knowing what you're going to be doing. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Petersen, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I saw this article this week that talked about a driveway overlapping the neighbor's property, and now what? And so basically these people were going to refinance their home, and so the lender required that they get a new survey. So they did the survey, and the survey found out that 2 feet of the driveway was on the neighbor's yard. And it had been there for 20 years and nobody knew anything about it. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't get a survey when they actually closed on the deal, but obviously didn't happen and everything like this. Now, that reminds me actually of a situation, and it was in Palm Coast several years ago, that I was working with multi-million-dollar property in one of the subdivisions on the ocean up there. It was a property that was actually on the golf course. And then you said the golf course, and then the ocean is what you saw there. And basically what had happened is that when this property was built, is that the builder who built it, they were on 0 lot lines, and 0 lot lines means that the house is right on the lot line, because then they give then on the other side, that's kind of open, you've got all of your side yard all on one side, so that, you can maximize the yard instead of splitting and putting, the house in the middle, and you've got maybe 5 feet on one side and 5 feet on the other. They put it so that you had 10 feet all on one side. So that's what a 0 lot line is. But what had happened on this particular deal is that the builder who had built it built the house 2 feet on the other person's property. Now, these lots, because they're golf and oceanfront, were quite narrow to begin with. I think they were 40-foot lots, so pretty narrow to begin with to put multi-million-dollar houses on it. So all these houses were, 3-4 stories. They had elevators, all of that kind of good stuff, because that's what they were. They were made for that purpose, that they had that wow factor and everything like that. And so they had balconies on every level and all of that, so that, you could be up high enough that you were above the golf course and seeing the ocean and all of that kind of stuff on there, but 2 feet over. So basically that was not this situation where your driveway's over and it says it's been there for 20 years. It's like, talk to the neighbors, see what they're thinking, all of that kind of stuff. And you can actually buy that little strip of land from them is one thing, and see what you could do. but just because it's been there for 20 years doesn't mean that it belongs to you now. And in this particular situation, it had to stop the sale for a couple of years, actually, because there were lawsuits then, because the lot next door had not been built on yet, and it was ready to be built. But then the lot was too narrow to put the house on it that they wanted to, because the builder of this particular house that we were supposed to be selling basically was 2 feet onto the other lot. So, it was a big deal. It was a lawsuit. The builder was actually the one who was sued ultimately by the neighbor and everything. But with the house in a lawsuit, you couldn't sell it. It was in the middle of, the new buyers would be going, well, what are we liable for? What's going to happen? And all of that. So you had to wait for that to be over. But it was very interesting in everything, how it all shook out. And actually several $100,000 was what it was, I believe, settled on. I think it was about 400 because of those 2 feet. And I just kept thinking, it's like, how could that big of a mistake be made, that you pour the concrete, that you do everything, 2 feet over on the other people's property? But it happens, and it's more common than you would think, because it wasn't anything that anybody meant to do, obviously, because who would want to, go through the hassle years later in everything in regards to what had happened there. And but you're not going to be able to move that house. That's not going to make sense either. So it really is, very important that you double check and do get a survey, or look at a survey, or at least look at the plot and everything from the best way that you can. And that's why lenders always require surveys. I remember I was selling another house, and we got the survey, and it always says on it, in regards to what's going on, underneath and all of that. And there was an easement for utilities that actually went under the slab of the house. And so it was a corner lot. And I think it was Duke Energy that actually had the easement. And the buyer that I was working with said, hey, I don't want to buy a house that they could, have the rights to go underneath the house and go underneath there, to fix some utility thing. I mean, that's kind of crazy, because you can see if it's in the backyard or something like that, that maybe, they would have access to it if there was some kind of a problem at some point in time, which is rare, but at least they would have access to it and you would know about it. But actually going underneath the house itself. And so basically, again, in that situation, we only had to wait a couple of months, and they were able to move the easement with a negotiation with the electric company, and move it so that it was not underneath the house. So that way, if they had some kind of major thing, they don't have the right to go underneath your house, burrow underneath your house to fix something, so obviously those kinds of things are important, and that's why you get a survey. And then I was but I was working with another couple recently, and they were purchasing a house, and we got the survey back, and it was as clean as a survey could be. There was nothing, going on. There was maybe an easement, outside of this property that was by the sidewalk, that didn't belong to them officially, and all of that kind of stuff. But the buyer was like, wow, this survey looks terrible. There's this, and this. And I was like thinking, my goodness, that's something that I would not even consider. And I didn't know what they were talking about. And they were actually just trying to get more money off of the sale using the survey, which if there was something legitimate, I get it. But when there isn't anything, then it didn't go anywhere. But it was a nice try. But basically, when it comes down to it, a survey is important to get to see what's kind of going on. It was a shocker for these people when they found out that their driveway was 2 feet over into the neighbor's property. And if you can only imagine what the deal with this multi-million-dollar house that was 2 feet over the neighbor's property on an oceanfront lot. Wow. So that was an interesting thing. And here I am all these years later, still remembering it and bringing it up and all of that. So these things do happen, and they're all resolvable with money many times. But basically, if you go in with your eyes wide open and you know what's going on, you've done all the tests, you've done everything that you need to do to be aware of what's happening, then that's going to be a good thing for everybody involved. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Petersen, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty. And to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So, I was going through some things and I found this that I thought was really kind of funny in a way, but it's planning a remodel, and it says keep value and satisfaction in mind. So people decide to remodel their homes for many reasons, which means top remodeling projects for homeowner satisfaction and cost recovery vary. And basically, so the report found that the highest joy scores, that means that the happiest that you are by doing these things, is number one is an addition of a primary bedroom suite. So if you don't have one and you would like to have one, I can see where that would add a lot of value. Most of our homes here were built, I would say for the most part, I would say from like 1980 on, and particularly there were a huge amount of homes built in the 90s and 2000s, and they all have primary bedroom, suites that they have like the primary bath and bedroom are actually in the bedroom and everything. But the interesting thing is like when you look at a lot of the houses that were built in the 80s, those primary bathrooms are many times just a toilet and a sink, a half bath, and very small. And if they did have a shower, I mean, when I look at most of them, I think if they're like 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet, that's about it. So the average person today would think, hey, that's a pretty small shower. And so they would want an upgrade on that. But so that's a joy score of having a primary bedroom suite. Another one that also gets a 10 rating is a kitchen upgrade. And then another thing that's kind of a surprising on a joy thing is new roofing. That would also be a 10, which is really kind of funny because you think, well, why would a roof be a 10? And I'm sure that it's because you're thinking, okay, it's new, I don't have to worry about it. And and roofs are expensive, and so that would be something that would be a high ticket item that has to be replaced from time to time. You can't afford to have a roof that is got shingles falling off of it, that basically is leaking and all of that kind of stuff when a hurricane happens to come along and all of that kind of stuff, which they are known to do on occasion. Last year we didn't have any that really hit us here in Central Florida, but there's always that chance, so not having to worry about it. So that was a joy score. And then the remodeling projects with the highest cost recovery, basically a new steel front door, 100%, closet renovation is 83%, and a new fiberglass front door is 80%. So that's interesting that a steel front door would be 100% versus a fiberglass front door would be 80%. Not sure why that is, but that's what they're saying. So the top remodeling projects that we recommend as realtors to sellers complete before listing their homes include painting the entire home, 50% say that, painting a single interior room, 41%, and installing new roofing, 37%. So basically, when it comes down to it, roofs, again, are very important here in Florida. And if you've got an older roof, and you've got insurance and everything like that is fine. But if it's on its last legs, then the new buyer may have a hard time getting insurance. I was working with a client that they were getting a home that did need a new roof about a month or so ago, and the people had discounted the house. They didn't want to put the roof on it. They didn't want to deal with it, so they discounted the house by about 40,000 in order to let the buyer know that, hey, you're going to have to get a roof. We know it. So we're kind of compensating you by lowering the amount of what it is, which was all set well and good and everything like that. But the challenge, like I told the buyer, is that, you're going to have a hard time getting insurance with anybody insuring it. Now, the previous owner actually had it insured with a well-known company that at this point, and had it with that company for years. But basically, my knowledge of is that company right now will not insure any home that is older than 20 years. So if your house was built before 2006, they will not even consider, putting a policy on it. Now, this house was about a 1995, I believe, house, and did have that company's insurance on it, but they were grandfathered in. They'd had it for years and all of that kind of stuff. So the new owner was not going to be able to take that over, which is what I always thought would actually be the easiest thing for an insurance company to do. If they've insured the house, they know what's going on with it, all that kind of stuff. And then when the new guy comes in, that they would just say, yeah, hey, just keep going with us because we know kind of what the scoop is and all of that kind of thing. But that's not how it works. So if the roof is old, then that's why the realtor is going to say, hey, we recommend that you replace it, because it could be a stumbling block with a lender when the time comes on. Not with the lender, because they need to have insurance, and if you don't have insurance, the lender's not going to go along with it. So that's what the biggest thing is. So basically, the projects which we have observed the highest increase in demand for our kitchen upgrade. A lot of people look for that, 48%, new roofing, 43%, and a bathroom renovation. So it's so funny, right, how the roof is coming up in almost every one of these categories. So when consumers remodel their homes, the primary reasons including upgrading worn out surfaces, finishes and materials, that's 27% of the people say that. Improving energy efficiency is 15%. Desiring a change is 18%, and preparing to sell a house within the next 2 years is 18%. Well, while housing affordability and rising mortgage rates have been considered potential motivators for home remodeling, most consumers, 89%, report that housing affordability was not a deciding factor in their decision to remodel. However, for a smaller segment of consumers, 9%, housing affordability did serve as a motivating factor for undertaking remodeling projects. Homeowners report that the most important outcomes for remodeling products are improved functionality and livability. 28% say that. Durable and long-lasting results, materials and appliances, 23%. And enhanced beauty and aesthetics is 23% as well. Following their remodeling projects, 64% of homeowners expressed a greater desire to be in their homes, while 46% reported they enjoyed their living spaces more. So basically, when it came down to it, they were happier and all of that kind of stuff. And if a cost were not a factor, 92% of the people who remodeled said they would choose to remodel additional areas of their homes. So basically, when it comes down to it, the way I always tell everybody is that if you're going to remodel, my opinion is that you should enjoy what you do, and that you should do it for you. And then if you get it when it comes time to sell, then that's a bonus. And that's probably the biggest thing. I think the biggest improvement that I find that most people have a hard time with these days is still the solar panels. It's like, they're a great blessing because you're generating your own electricity and all of that kind of good stuff. But to get the money out of the solar panels that you put into it is very difficult to do. And sometimes it makes it so that the house is harder to sell because it's like you've got to get that money to get that your investment back, or part of your investment back, but it doesn't always happen the way that you would like it to. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that comes into play when you're looking at it, is you want to look at where I am now, what's it going to be in the future, and what do I want it to be. But it's like it comes down to that joy thing. Is it going to make you happy? Then go for it and do it. Some people just enjoy, doing projects and everything like that. And so you've got to do what it's important to you. And that's what I always feel is the best way to look at it. But if you do want to have an opinion of how much money it's going to add to the value, then we're happy to meet with you and let you know. And if you're not going to sell, it really doesn't matter. But if you are going to sell, it might. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Petersen, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So an interesting thing that I found is that basically it said that what creates 90% of millionaires. And real estate investment is widely cited as the primary factor in building wealth for a vast majority of millionaires, a trend often attributed to Andrew Carnegie's observation that 90% of millionaires own real estate. This wealth generation is driven by leverage, tax benefits, and long-term appreciation. So basically, how real estate creates millionaires is what I'll finish up the show on today, is that, first of all, you leverage other people's money. Investors can use bank financing to buy a property, allowing them to control a large asset with a small down payment. And then appreciation in equity as the property values rise and mortgage balances decrease over time. Owners build significant equity. So if you're going to have if you're going to do a rental property, then the income provides passive income streams for you that can actually pay it off. And so if it's like I explain it this way, which most of you probably already know this, but if you bought a house, say for $100,000, which there aren't any of them out there right now in our area, and you put 10% down. So that would be $10,000 for a $100,000 house. Okay. And so basically what would happen then is that, on that debt service that you would have, let's say that you had a payment of maybe about $600 a month on that $100,000. And so maybe it'd be like 700. So let's just say 700, but you could rent that property out for that $700. So you spent that 10,000, but you don't have any other expenses because the money coming in is going to pay whatever your debts are from that point forward. And so, if your payment's 700, then you'd probably get 1,000 in rent or whatever in doing that. And so you're leveraging other people's money in order to build your wealth. And then they're paying down the amount that you owe. And after 30 years, usually you own it outright. You don't have any other debt on it unless you're continuing to take that money out and use it to buy other property or other investments and everything. And so then on top of that, you've got the appreciation that comes into play. So over time, when you look at it year over year and all of that kind of good stuff, you're going to find that the properties increase. After about 30 years, traditionally, it's usually in the neighborhood of about 3 times of what you paid for it. So if you took an initial investment of $10,000, bought your $100,000 house, had a tenant pay for everything while they were, living there, and then you were paying all that stuff off, and say 20 years later you sold it for 3 times what you bought it for, you would sell it for $300,000, and your investment was 10. It's a really good deal. You invested $10,000 and walked away 20 years later with 300,000. Not a bad deal. So the cash flow basically is that, and then tax laws provide benefits like deductions for mortgage interest and depreciation. And so basically, that is, so that in a nutshell is what it comes down to in regards to, what has created 90% of millionaires. Now, other things that they look at basically is that they're in the stock market. 80% of them are. A lot of them have business ownership, long-term investing in frugality. Basically, that's going to, give you supposedly sudden wealth and a high savings rate that they live below their means. But basically, when it comes down to it, 90% of the people that own their houses, and it's really interesting when you do those studies that basically is the difference between rental and between purchasing. And I think that I will go ahead and do one of those right now. So looking at a tax calculator that calculates the difference between renting and buying and what would happen here. So basically, what I'm looking at a home sale price of 350,000, which is possibly a little bit low for our area, but putting 3.5% down. The loan term is 30 years. The interest rate I did is 6.75, which I think is a little bit high. The property taxes, probably in the neighborhood of, 30, we're going to say $3,000 roughly. And in homeowners insurance is 1,400. The income tax profile is you're making about 100 grand, filing status is single in Florida, and paying $2,000 in rent. So the way that this would work is that your $2,000 in rent would be your current rent payment. Your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance would be $2,567. So basically, that's a little bit higher, obviously, and but the monthly cost of tax of home ownership after tax savings is $2,361. So that's after you've got a $205 a month tax savings, and so. The extra cost of owning a home a day before your equity is $12 per day. The home appreciation a year is 3.8% average growth is what it is over time. So that would be a $13,000 300 increase a year. And the equity that's built by year one is 16.9. Your mortgage interest rate is 22,688, and this would be deductible. Your property tax is also tax deductible. And so your total tax saving is $2,465. And so that's where we got it to be $205 a month. And the taxes it paid because you were renting would be $13,841. Taxes paid of owning is $11,376. And your current income with renting is $100,000 versus $74,000 taxable income. So in both cases, you're at a 22% tax rate. And basically, when it comes down to it, you do have a gain of $953 every month from owning a home versus renting. So it's a little bit more cash flow out of your pocket in order to make it work in this example. But basically, you've got equity increase of $1,408 a month, and your tax, that's with your tax savings of 205, so that puts you in the green of 953 a month. So that's just on your own home. So what I find a lot of people do is that they go ahead and they run this, and you look and see, what you're going to be able to get on the property on your own, from a rental property, and get all of your money that's covered, and basically you make it happen. So this is showing the monthly rent of only $2,000. The people that I find that do the best is when the rental rate is about 1% of the value, and then you're going to end up with a lot of cash flow in your bank account and all of that kind of stuff, and just build your equity and everything faster. So there's always a way to do it. It just comes down to what's going to be best for you and your family in regards to doing it. But why not be like the 90% of the millionaires out there and own some property? So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.